Thanks for checking out another clip of the Cashflow Contractor. We'd love to have you as a part of our audience. Click subscribe wherever you get your podcast.
Mike, I'm curious about a couple of things. You had mentioned earlier that the previous locations, you had 7, now you're at 2, you sold to general managers. What makes a great general manager?
Great question. So I actually think there's a few different types of general managers.
Okay.
So we kind of define them as a starter, a working GM, and then what we call the GM plus model. So basically, a starter GM is someone who wants to start a location from scratch. They're going to be very, very sales hungry. They don't mind pounding pavement. They love running ads. They love doing estimates. They are very sales driven, sales motivated. How we do our comp plan for them is going to be different also because we want them to scale as fast as possible. They also get bored when you start making the business profitable and leveling out growth. And so one of my best general managers is who I sold my locations to because he was bored after growing 2 or 3 of them to the size and then just putting them in like, hey, this is where we're going to stay at this size. We're going to make it profitable. We're going to raise prices. We're going to optimize pricing. We're going to cut out service. We're going to simplify. He's like, I'm bored. And it's because he was a starter. He was more entrepreneurial. And then I think of a working GM. A working GM, in my opinion, can manage up to 8 employees max. And they are going to usually do a business in our world up to $800,000 in annual revenue. During peak season, maybe 7, 8 employees. Less peak season, maybe 4 or 5 employees. Maybe 3, 4 trucks. Again, in lawn care and landscaping, the numbers scale up for different services a little bit. But the reason I call them working GM is because their time is actually spent in the field a little bit, in addition to doing sales. Like their main objective is get jobs and also manage your crew. Once we scale past 800,000, typically the general manager is no longer in the field. They are really just there to train the team. They are there to hire, fire, and train. And so when it comes to those 3, I'm kind of looking at different aspects. So if they're a starter, I'm like, can they sell? Can they literally go up to knock on a stranger's door and sell them something? That's like probably my number 1 priority. A working GM, I'm making sure they're obsessed about systems, procedures, and optimization. Because at that level, they're not going to have massive amounts of growth, but I want them to be very driven from a compensation perspective based on a profit. And I want them to love tweaking little things, like parking the truck slightly different to save 5 seconds. That's the type of working GM that is super strong with operations, but I don't need them to do sales a bunch. The phone for us gets answered at Command Center. We have a lot of our pricing done on our website. So I don't need them to be sales driven. I just need them to run the team. And so there's different skill sets that I kind of look at based on the size of the business I'm bringing in. But I would rather be able to find someone that can just manage 6 to 8 employees instead of someone who can manage 20. And that's why for us, usually we keep our locations under $1 million in revenue. And then as it bumps up against that, we just optimize the pricing, i.e. raise them, to keep the growth down. Because I want to be able to hire a GM that only needs to manage about 8 people.
Yeah, really interesting. We're going to come back to price increases because that's a big topic for us. So I'm curious, and I guess I'll apply it later. My question is, executive assistants, yay, nay, do you have one? Do you have administrative assistant? Maybe, executive assistant can be a broad term. What is your thought on that?
In terms of a business of what size?
Let's just say 800,000 million for you guys, like that under $1 million. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if you can get someone that can do a lot of your admin tasks, more of like an office person, great. I want to grow past $500,000 as fast as possible. Because at 1 employee with me, I can do 200,000, I can do 250, I can be pretty profitable. But again, I'm in labor. I'm always in the field. If I get hit by a bus, the business stops. And I want to scale past 500,000 as fast as possible. I'm willing to have a little bit of waste, meaning I might get an office person, know that they're not always efficient, know that their time isn't being super useful, but I hire them for 4 hours a day, and sure, I lose money sometimes. Their fixed expense, their overhead, whatever. I need to get past 500,000 as fast as possible. In terms of an executive assistant, someone that actually is just serving me personally, I think you got to be a bigger business, honestly. I think there's so many ways to be able to organize your day using very basic tools. And I think so many people are like, I need an executive assistant. And it's like, I've had an executive assistant. And And they're great. They're great. Don't get me wrong. But I let them go, and I suddenly realized that having one for a while optimized everything in my day enough to where I could actually take it all back, and it wasn't a huge lift. I think the ability to have an executive assistant is important. Like, do you actually have a system for your inbox? Do you actually have a system for how emails and text and scheduling, how everyone can get on your calendar? Having the systems for an EA is actually the hack, I think. And you can then expand the runway before you actually need one. So I'm looking for probably the next few years to get a full-time in-person EA with me all the time to run meetings, go and start new departments, things like that. But that person is going to be a very different looking than the person I hired a couple years ago to like manage my inbox and my calendar. And so personally, I think from an executive assistant point of view, unless you're doing 10 million plus, I think usually you can optimize a lot of things in your day, your calendar, etc. But I would go hire one for a couple months because it'll force you to start using systems the same way you did for your business.
No, so good.
That's good.
I think it is true that it is the systems that you're forced to create because you have an EA or an assistant, administrative assistant. I think it's challenging because a true executive assistant, in my opinion, could run a meeting for you. They could be an executive, right? And I think administrative assistant, I even call it owner's assistant. Like, I think that's what's more valuable. Finding an owner's assistant, because as an owner, you're wearing all these different hats. If you can find an assistant who can temporarily support you in different roles, whether that's marketing or whether that's sales, whether that's with HR, who can, hey, I'm trying to hire someone. Can you screen all the applicants for me? Those kinds of things. I think that's where you can have a lot of lift as an owner if you have someone who's doing that more administrative assistant role, can answer phones, jack of all trades type role. I think there's a lot of value in that. But a true executive assistant, you're right. 10 million is probably where you're looking more like, okay, I need someone who can, run full meetings without me being present and make decisions on my behalf, right? So very interesting.
Thanks for checking out a clip from the Cashflow Contractor. We have full episodes where we go deep on topics that help you grow a construction business that runs without you so you can have less stress, more time, more money. Now, we've got other videos, other clips, but if you want to check out the full episode for this clip, you can click wherever our editor put it. It might be here, might be there, might be over my face, I don't know. But thank you for checking us out. We'd love to have you as a part of our audience. So subscribe or check out a full episode wherever you get podcasts.